let's do it. Let's hit the books. Part of the Hammer Betting Network alongside the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joey Knish, producer extraordinaire Zach Phillips. I'm merely Brad Powers. Today, we are talking one of the big two conferences. Of course, it's the Big 10, or is it the Big 15 or 18, 16, 20? I'm not sure. I lost track how many teams are in this conference, but it is the Big 10 conference. Obviously, we're talking Ohio State. We're talking Michigan. We're talking the newbies, Oregon, USC, Washington, and obviously UCLA to a lesser extent. We'll break all that down and more. But before we get into that, let me remind everybody, in case this is the first conference preview that you've seen for the upcoming season, we are proud to announce that we have a new sponsor. You might have heard of them. They're called FanDuel Sportsbook, FanDuel Sportsbook. And obviously, Knish and myself, super excited to have them as a partner. Obviously, one of the industry leaders, specifically college football, one of the best products and pricings, lots of college football offerings. If you've been following and watching along all offseason, we've talked about FanDuel since they started putting win totals up in February. Great live menu as far as college football goes. First to market often for college football, whether it's sides, totals on a weekly basis or the off season. We love that. Lots of fun, different types of bets, whether you're betting on awards or whatnot. Easy to use, fast payouts. Now, I will say week 0 isn't until the end of next week. You still got about 10 days in between. And if you're looking to fill the void as far as summer goes, we still got Major League Baseball last I checked. That's the only thing getting us through the dog days of summer. And FanDuel is hooking up all their customers right now with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day for the rest of summer. You can take your booster bonus and bet on everything Major League Baseball related, whether home runs, the strikeouts, and even the final score. Plus, with FanDuel, you can combine your bets in a live same-game parlay for a shot and an even bigger payout. So head on over to FanDuel.com. Start racking up some runs in the sun. Disclaimer, you must be 21 plus, 18 plus in D.C., and present in select states. Optional and requirement. Wager requirements apply. Bonuses awarded as non-withdrawable bonuses, bets, or profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including bonus expiration. See terms and conditions at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg/help.com in Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Vermont, Virginia, Wyoming. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland, or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE New York, or text HOPE New York in New York. You've been waiting for this one, Knish. This is your baby doll. I grew up in Big Ten country. Let's not beat around the bush here. Let's break some of these teams down. I mean, because we got 18 of them to break down now.
I was going to say the Big Ten, just nothing like a good old UCLA Oregon Big Ten matchup to kick it off. But yeah, home of the national champs, baby. And I mean, some people think there's a back-to-back potential. I might be too humble to think they're going back-to-back, but bringing a lot of talent back, we'll get to them.
Yeah, I don't know about that, to say the least. Coast to coast now. We're in New Jersey to L.A. So speaking of, right smack dab kind of in the middle of the coast to coast, let's start off. So obviously when these previews, we're just going with my power ratings. We're starting from the bottom and we're going to the top. At the bottom is a first-year coach that I know you and I like quite a bit. We love the hire, just don't love the team for this upcoming season. Actually, Michigan State is at the bottom of my power ratings for the preseason. Jonathan Smith's, again, one of my favorite coaches out there. I think eventually he'll figure it out. He's just gonna take him a couple of years to do so. This is a Michigan State program that's obviously bottomed out last few years under Mel Tucker and then the interim last year. Schedule, boy, I mean, after the Prairie View and Boston College games, I mean, you're looking at Ohio State, at Oregon, Iowa, at Michigan. I mean, that gets tough for a team that's got some depth issues. Now, I am hearing, I've read some of the fall camp reports. They love Aiden Childs. I know that's a guy that you and I both like, but you're going to have to give him time as well. We're pretty pessimistic on Michigan State. In fact, longtime viewers of the show, if you're following along in March, April, May, took under 5.5. Got you go through the past shows. We gave out under 5.5. It's safe to say that's no longer available, but we took that original position, Knish.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of our favorite of the portfolio that we were talking about in the summer. one of the favorite positions there. And I agree. And this is not to be a hater. I like Jonathan Smith a lot. I like the hire. I think, in terms of losing Mel Tucker in that type of fashion, that they couldn't have done much better than getting a program rebuild guy, a guy who took Oregon State from the dumpster and made them a Pac-12 competitor every year. But I mean, this roster was it fell apart last year. They do bring in, again, Aiden Childs, kind of a year zero here. I hope they don't get him killed, because I think the offensive line is going to be quite porous. And to say almost that, like, Smith lost a lot of their 4 or 5 starters in the spring to teams that, like that to me was like, I didn't think they were going to have a great year. And then a team that couldn't afford to lose any talent lost 4 or 5 guys. He didn't really, go crazy with the portal either, which I don't blame him. To me, it isn't like we have to win this year turnaround type thing. I would be, build with his guys. Although this is from some local, we'll call them Knishi moles. This program's not spending a lot of money right now. The word was kind of, we're gonna see what Smith can do, and then maybe the funds will come back. But part of the reason they lost, I know, I agree. That's not the way it is. Part of the reason they lost some of those guys is because there's not a lot of NIL going around right now. So I think this could be a real. I mean, they have that 4-game stretch where I was talking to one of my state buddies, like how many points do they score between the Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, Michigan stretch? That's as hard a 4-game stretch as anybody in the country has. This team is not getting to 6. We obviously, we're on the under 5. I'd be surprised if they got to 5. I think 5 and 7 would be a great year one for Smith, and 4 and 8, 3 and 9 would not surprise me.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of those key transfers post-spring, and that's when we took advantage of the Michigan State win total. Zach's telling me May 6th is when we gave it out. I think that was our first show post-spring. Keep in mind the portal closed, April 30th, and we're just reacting to that. The market, that's new as far as that portal schedule, and just telling you in the future, you might want to watch them shows post-portal, because the market doesn't react to a lot of those portal news, especially when it's non-quarterback and it's like a key position group like the defensive line where Michigan State got decimated there. Let's talk a first-year coach next up. Indiana. Tough team to power, right? Because it's basically an entirely new team. It's basically James Madison from last season. I mean, they imported about half the roster, it feels like, from James Madison, plus a lot of other key guys. It's basically... to tell you, it's a really good group of 5, like a group of 5 all-star roster. Curtis Rourke at quarterback, a lot of those James Madison kids. So we're going to see what a group of 5 all-star bunch can do in the new Big Ten. Schedule's not overly difficult. I mean, yes, Ohio State and Michigan are on there, but, Penn State, no Oregon. And outside of those 2 games, I mean, there's a lot of winnable games that could go either way. It was a team that FanDuel did a good job. Had these win totals posted in the Big Ten in February. At that time, I was thinking, how in the hell does Indiana get the bowl eligibility with this roster, especially coming off a couple of, we're talking 2-3 win type of seasons. So my original position was under 5.5. I no longer like that position. Not that I'm running to bet, the over right now, but I think 5.5 is about right. I will say there's some 6s out there. That I would lean under, because I think 7's pushing the limit here. But again, it's just it's a tough team to power rate because it's new, and they got a lot of coin flip games that could go either way. Starting with I think week 3 against UCLA, that'll be a big game for both first-year coaches.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know what, if you want to make the pessimistic case, we both love Curtis Rourke. Part of the reason we had a bunch of Ohio positions last year was because of Curtis Rourke. He doesn't have the greatest clean bill of health. So that's one of those things that really could derail the season. I like what he's done. Again, he wasn't going to get – you're not going to get a ton of, P5 talent to come in. So bring a lot. He brought a lot of guys with you. I think that formula has worked at a number of programs coming over from James Madison, some G5 talent. And supposedly, program that's spending some money a little bit here over at Indiana. So, hey, they were able to retain – I know for a fact that Michigan went hard in the paint after Donovan McCulley. They wanted him. They wanted a bigger receiver to get on the outside. Indiana was able to keep him. And I'm sure they didn't keep him because, he had school pride. They kept him because they gave him a nice paycheck. So, they got little bit of returning talent. They did lose their just yesterday, maybe the day before, their right guard. That had started a lot of games for them, out for the year. Name escaping me at the moment, but so not
it's not the left tackle. I think the left tackle is really good.
Yeah, so they've got some things. I agree with you though. This would be one on 6. Would just have to be an under. I think if you got into this team when in the middle of it, when there were some 4.5, some 5, I think you got a good price. I agree. I'm not dying to play under, at either way on 5.5. 6 though would be an underplay, even with a little bit of juice.
Let's talk next up. We're going to fly through some of these bottom teams just because this is the biggest conference in college football. We love you guys, but I'm sure that you don't want to listen to us for 2.5 hours. Purdue is next up. Second-year coach Walters didn't have a great year one, a little bit hit and miss as far as performance and consistency. This year's team should be a little bit better. The problem, the schedule is really difficult, especially when you got 2 non-conference games, Notre Dame and at Oregon State, and you are playing Oregon, you are playing Ohio State, you're playing Penn State in conference. So, I mean, the win total is among the lowest out of all the Big Ten teams, and it's probably deserved. Even though I like some of the additions that he made. He got a couple of kids from Georgia that I think will contribute. They could be a team that maybe I bet on an individual game basis, starting with that second game against Notre Dame. If they're getting, that's an in-state game where if they're getting way more than 2 touchdowns, close to 3 touchdowns, I might bet Purdue as a sneaky dog in some of them games, but I didn't really. 4.5 seems about right to me with the juice, to the under, very heavy there.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know what? I liked Ryan Walters. I kind of liked him a little bit better as a defensive coordinator as opposed to, a guy who's going to revamp a program. This is a tough job now in this conference. This is a bottom tier job that doesn't have a ton of, portal influence and NIL money. So, and they lost. Our guy, if you've listened to the books all summer, our guy, Deion Burks, was, massive for them. Think he can be huge for Oklahoma. That's a tough loss for a program that doesn't have really any superstars. So they got Card back. They got Mockbee back. They got Reggie Love from Illinois. I think that, the offense would be okay, maybe a little step forward there. Defense just doesn't have guys. They did a little bit in the transfer portal, but just not a lot of elite talent on that defense. And as you say, a schedule that's not super friendly. So yeah, to me, this is not, I didn't do anything on the win total either, but it would be a lean to the under if I was going either way.
Yeah, 4.5. It's just, the juice is minus nearly, 178 at FanDuel there. So it's just a little pricey at this point, but certainly a lean towards the under there. Yeah, they lost their dude Scorton off the edge on that defense. That safety kid, number 31, Thieneman, is okay, but again, not difference makers. Let's talk Illinois. A coach that I don't think either one of us is particularly fond of. He's not going to wow you X's and O's. Bielema at Illinois. Obviously a disappointing 5-7 campaign considering how good they were 2 years prior with Walters as defense coordinator. It looks like they missed him last year. You mentioned Purdue lack of defensive, guys on that edge. Illinois lost their dude on defense, that being Newton. If you didn't think he was important, go rewatch the Wisconsin game where Wisconsin can't move the football all game. Newton gets ejected at the end of the third quarter. Wisconsin goes down the field twice, scores, and ends up covering the point spread in that one late in the final seconds. So that's a big loss for Illinois. Schedule's a little bit, I don't see a lot of layups outside of Eastern Illinois and, Central Michigan. Is that really a layup? I'm not sure. But, man, after that, again, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, this is one where I'm on under 5.5. I'm interested to see where you're at here.
No, I'm with you. And it was actually going to be, we don't do a lot of pre-show. We just kind of do it organic. I agree. This was going to be my first actual play here. It would be.
Let's do it. That's official under 5.5. I bet that. Look, a lot of the stuff's juiced out at this point. That's very reasonable at minus 128. So I made a similar bet this week on under 5.5 Illinois. I'm
with you. And you know what? I think Bert, I think you just missed the window of where, as you said 2 years ago, they had you would not believe, you go back and look at some of the guys they had drafted, the NFL talent that Lovie Smith had recruited to Illinois. He wasn't a good coach. He couldn't do anything on game days. He recruited some players and they developed some guys. And this is a roster 2 years ago that should have played for the Big Ten title that year. Burt blew it. They regressed a little bit this year. And as you said, they lose a couple more NFL guys off last year's roster, a couple guys in the transfer portal. And what are you left with? I don't love Luke Altmaier. The kind of that Big Ten mess where we're going to man ball that, that whole thing that I think they had a little bit of an advantage, in the Big Ten West for a minute with what Burt tried to come in and do. To me, that's all gone. The offensive line is regret. I don't see it. I don't see a position group on this team that I'm like, yes, I like that. And so some of these, Big Ten coin flippy games where, they're going to lose to Penn State, they're going to lose to Michigan, they're going to lose to Oregon, but like at Nebraska, I don't like them there.
They're an underdog there. They're
at Rutgers, don't like them there. Even if I give them, Eastern Illinois, Central Michigan, Minnesota.
They're going to lose to Kansas probably, even though that's a home game.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. So, yeah, I don't see 6 wins here. I think this is one of those programs that's in the wrong direction. We talked about a couple of resets. This one is trending downward. And if they have a real bad year, I don't know the Burt shelf life of this is going in the wrong direction because he's not really recruiting talent either.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up a couple years ago. Remember, they were sitting at 7-1, and they lost not 1 but 2 games, I think, after that as a double-digit favorite to like Michigan State and somebody else. They just win one of them games, they play for the Big Ten championship. And not that they would have beaten Michigan, but it still would have been a nice feather in Bielema's cap to have them all in the Big Ten. I mean, that window. We're going to repeat this on a few of these Big Ten West teams, but the window for opportunity to get to make a little bit of a leap in this conference, it's over. You're not playing the Big Ten West anymore.
You're never getting back.
No, it's over.
Yeah. I mean, if you were Nebraska, it took them 15 years to get their shit together here in the Big Ten, and it's over. Now, by the time they got it together, they got no shot.
Well said. Let's talk about a team that did make the Big Ten championship game a few times here in recent memory. And then last year, I think stunned everybody considering what happened during the summer. Fitzgerald getting fired, then it's the whole, at least the college football world watches an isolated TV game against Rutgers where they get crushed on week 1. The market hates Northwestern so much that I bring this up. They were literally at points in the week a home underdog to UTEP. They destroy UTEP in that game, and boy, Braun does a great job getting this team to a bowl game, to say the least. They win the bowl game. I watched it in person. They were more physical than Utah. I mean, that was as impressive as a coaching job as you'll see anybody. Forget just last season in recent college football history, considering what he was dealing with on the field and off the field. Now, they lost some guys. I know it's 15 returning starters, but a lot of their key guys did go. A couple starters in the secondary are playing for like West Virginia and Notre Dame. So there's some key parts and pieces and parts missing there. Another thing, the schedule's a little bit difficult. They've never really had a strong home field. It's going to be very interesting to see what that setup, a 15,000 seat, facility there right on the lake. It's going to be beautiful views, but barely any home field advantage. The only thing I could think of maybe sharp wise is, a lot of the opposing fan bases like the Buckeyes of the world would have way more fans. Now they can control that crowd a little bit where it's 90% Northwestern fans getting tickets. So I don't know what to make this team. They overachieved expectations so much last year that I think it's certainly a fall down to earth a little bit to, maybe a bowl game is even beyond their reach at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you there in terms of I just don't. It's a team that has probably the lowest overall talent level in the Big Ten. And I know, as you said, bring back, a decent amount of guys, but a lot of these guys, they're just, I don't know how, honestly, I don't know how he won 8 games last. That is one of the most underrated coaching jobs of the last decade in college football, to take that team. And I agree. There's definitely some regression coming. The problem being is, this team's lined at 4.5 wins. So, and
the market's all over it.
Yeah. It was one of the, you were, maybe maybe we can get a 6 and go under. No. It was easily, kind of baked in there. And as you said, they get Eastern Illinois at home, but this is a program that has lost to directional FCS schools recently, within the last couple of years, and it has lost to MAC schools recently. And that's the kind of not to be, begrudge what they did last year, but that's almost the kind of those games are never automatic wins for the Northwestern, talent, the program that they have. So I don't know. Even at 4.5, I'd still lean to the under. It's just kind of a murderous, row. That those last 6-8 weeks are really tough with not a lot of layups. And I don't know. I mean, Miami, Ohio isn't a game. Give me week 1.
Yeah,
so
only a 4-point favorite in that one.
Yeah.
Now, I laid it a little bit early on Northwestern, but you've seen FanDuel's current numbers, Northwestern up to 4.5. Something tells me if it continues to climb, there'll be buyback on Miami, Ohio. At some point. Boy, look at that total. They're already into the best piece of advice, but I think the market's getting aware of this. Look at that total of 41.5. Anytime I visited this facility this spring, any type of wind off that lake is gonna really have a significant impact on this stadium. I mean, it'll be something to look for. Their home games, now not all their home games. There's a couple of them they're going to play at Wrigley. But a majority of their first 4 games or so are going to be played in this facility. And got to tell you, you're going to see under money as soon as those totals open up, and we've seen that in that game. Let's keep it moving. Next team up, a team that's gotten a little bit more optimism as far as the betting markets. Minnesota is a team that the win total opened 4.5. It's up to 5.5 now in a lot of spots. PJ Flex had success here. Now last year was a little bit of a down year. You can see that over at FanDuel now 5.5, almost flat. Well, with the under juice just a little bit there. This is a Minnesota team breaking in a new quarterback from New Hampshire. The market expects it to be a significant upgrade. Taylor at running back, provided he's healthy, should be fine. There's still some concerns for me. I was talking to Bud Elliott before you showed up fashionably late at Circa. I'm joking with you. You had a flight. And he brought up a good point, and it was a good conversation I was having with him. They lost the defensive coordinator, longtime defensive coordinator, Joe Rossi.
Yeah.
Went to Michigan State. He doesn't have prior experience with Jonathan Smith. He maybe got a little bit more, but that to me, those types of lateral per se moves, what is that a leading indicator that something, is not right at Minnesota? Because last year was underwhelming. And a guy like that leaves. It raised my eyebrows a little bit. Not that, I'm part of the over 4.5. We like them to beat North Carolina in week 1, but that's just something that is preventing me from saying, hey, yep, this team's right back slamly. They're right back to 6-7 win team. I don't see that.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend a lot. As you said, the coordinator, the guy from Rutgers comes over, Corey Heatherman. So, I kind of like what he has, and they bring a decent amount back. So I think this defense can get back to, right. I'm not going to make maybe the top peak of the Fleck era, but I think it can be very good again. The question that you got to see is, and this, I think will lead into our next discussion here for the Rutgers going in. Like, I thought Cali McManus was the worst quarterback in the conference last year. I don't know why Rutgers went out and got him. I love that Minnesota went away from him. And again, and FC, Max Brosmer. I mean, I think he'll be an upgrade. I don't know if they have much past him. He better be an upgrade because I don't know if they have much other quarterback talent in this roster. But again, and Darius Taylor, from local guy from around here, a guy who Michigan tried to get back at the last second, running back. And they couldn't get, and yeah, he can play. I think he can go back to a little bit more flex ball here with a stable of backs. They got a couple in the transfer portal, bigger offensive line. And I just think it'll be back to a more classic Minnesota, not the, not the 3. And do I think they go like 7-8 wins? Probably not, but I think they're a bowl team. I like that Brosmer can give them a little bit more, like a Daniel Jackson as well. It's never going to be a team. I mean, for a couple of years, this is a team that had some really good skill talent at the. Don't really see that on the outside, but I think Brosmer can give them at least some passing threat. Where Cali McManus, I can't play. I think he should be back at the FCS level. So I'm surprised he's still a Power 5 quarterback.
You brought it up. Let's talk Cali McManus and Rutgers. It's the next team that we're previewing here. Rutgers team that I like personnel-wise, besides the quarterback. You talk about a running back. They have one of the more underrated running backs in the country. I like their meat and potatoes on both sides of the line of scrimmage. If you don't believe me, go watch them play Miami in the bowl game. They beat up Miami physically on both sides. Cristobal's all about the physicality. I mean, Rutgers, Schiano took it to him that game. And we've talked about this on the weekly show. missed opportunity for Rutgers because, man, when you look at the schedule, and we talked about this, I don't see Michigan. I don't see Ohio State. I don't see Penn State. I don't see Oregon. This was one where if you got the quarterback right, not that you needed a Heisman level guy, but just a functional quarterback. Hey, if the breaks went our way, you look at the schedule, we could have won 8 or 9 games in this version of the Big Ten. I mean, that would be an historical, like a really great season for Rutgers. They don't have the quarterback. I think they can get to a bowl game, but I don't see much past that. That's where I'm at on Rutgers.
It's just bewildering that they didn't. I mean, especially with some of the guys. I mean, go and get an FCS level. I like what some like G5 teams did at quarterback in terms of better than what
UNLV.
Right?
That's what they did. They got 2 functional guys.
How could you not get one of those 2 guys? But to think that Cali McManus is going to be the answer for a team, as you said, the roster, a lot coming back. They've got some real deal NFL talent on that team. The schedule set up, like it's all set up. And not only are we both down on Cali McManus, but then that decision runs Gavin Wimsatt out of town, who I didn't think was any good. I mean, but now if Cali McManus isn't your guy, you got nobody. Like there's nobody who's going to come in and be like, okay, we can run this guy out there. So, I mean, at least Wimsatt, for nothing else, had a bunch of experience and some athletic ability. But, I mean, yeah, I am shocked that they did not go out and make a stronger move in the transfer portal, or at least a couple of guys to throw at the problem than that. And I think that sinks them from a potential, like that was a ceiling. If you get a decent quarterback, Big Ten championship type of schedule, type of team that they had back, where you like that would have been a fun long shot of 100, 150 to 1 or something to sprinkle a little bit on. Not with that quarterback room though.
Speaking of quarterback room and lack thereof, Maryland has a overhaul at the quarterback room. They're next up, a team that I got to be honest. I think he's done a pretty good job here. At least he's exceeded my expectations, Mike Loxley. The last few years. I mean, Maryland's been pretty consistent. Now, they win the games they should. They lose to everybody that's worth a damn. But I think what helps them is they're no longer, playing in that Big Ten East where they have to play up in Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. They couldn't get over the hill there. They're definitely not going over the hill with this year's offense that I think takes a big step back. This year's defense should be maybe his best unit, but we saw the market very pessimistic on Maryland. Open 7.5, down to 6.5 with the under on 6.5 juiced. There you can see a FanDuel, under 6.5 minus 142. So I mean, literally legit moved more than a win here. I'm part of it. I agree with it. Now I will say this: the one positive for Maryland, that schedule. I mean, Connecticut, Michigan State, at Virginia, Villanova, at Indiana, Northwestern. I mean, even though I downgraded their power rating pretty significantly from last year, they could be favored in those first 6 games. Doesn't mean that they're 6-0, but I could see 5-1. The problem is after that, USC at Minnesota, at Oregon, Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State. They might be an underdog in all those, or maybe a favorite in only one. 6.5 seems about right to me. I'd probably actually lean under, but the juice is telling me to stay away at this point.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, this is a team that it's never been a team that I'm going to rely on to rely on their defense. And just that quarterback position, I don't love Billy Edwards Jr. They brought in MJ Morris from NC State. I don't think he was, you talk to people at NC State about him, and he was definitely not the answer in terms of what they were doing. So, and again, it's a team that, for a lot of years under Loxley, had some really athletic, some really high-end skill talent, put some guys in the NFL. I don't really see that as much on this offense in terms of, what they've got all over the field. So it's a team that, they kind of ran. And as you said, to go almost 500 for years, this 5th or 6th in the Big Ten East, where you're having to play all the, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn every single year. I agree with you. I think Loxley's done a decent job. It's just, timing wise, I think there's some teams that really could have, like some older Maryland teams that could have given the conference a much stronger run than this version. It's just kind of like by the time they just got out of the Big Ten East and get a lighter schedule, now it's like, I don't really love this team. So I agree with you. Those early 7.5s were money. Still would lean under at 6.5, but not going to play it with that juice.
Yeah, I thought there was times the last couple of years, and look, he's done 3 straight bowl wins. There was times where I thought this was maybe the 4th most talented roster in the Big Ten.
They had Ohio State on the ropes a couple times.
And your boys, do you forget? They had Michigan. That was a tight game last year. Actually 2 years they played Michigan tough. So they just didn't get that, big time win, that breakthrough. But I still think he's doing a good job. He's obviously recruiting very well. It's just maybe missed that window a little bit. When you bring in teams like Oregon, I mean, that's another loss on the schedule. UCLA's next. Speaking of one of the new teams in the Big Ten, boy, we talk about teams that have been bet down in the market. My goodness, I would argue that UCLA's win totals probably moved the most towards the negative on the Bruins. Nothing but one-way action against this team. I see it. There's certainly question marks about the inexperience of this coaching staff. Deshaun Foster's never been a coordinator. Some people really like the Bieniemy hire. I'm kind of a wait and see there. The offense should be okay. Defense, I think, takes a pretty big step back. And then I think the big thing that's holding UCLA back is more the increase of strength of schedule. Because when you play at Hawaii, which is not a gimme, we see the market been very anti-UCLA there. And then you're at LSU, Oregon, at Penn State. Lots of travel. There might be only 3 or 4 games that they're favored in. You're starting to see why the win total was early, 6.5 now down to 4.5 in some spots.
Yeah, this is, as you said,
look, 4.5 there at FanDuel. That's amazing.
Yeah, you just don't see that. I mean, you just don't really see that in this era of, sports betting in college football. That type of movement, 2 full wins on a season win total, and I mean. Am I gonna make the devil's advocate case for UCLA here? They do. I mean, Ethan Garbers, I think, is okay. I give it that. They had kind of it's like under Chip Kelly, they went through this transformation of trying to be more of like this. By the end of it was like this physical defensive team. So they bring a decent amount back on defense. I don't really know what to think of either coordinator hire. Bieniemy was a guy who 3, 4, 5 years ago, you're like, who's going to hire him to be the next NFL coach? And now he's, taking the OC job at UCLA. And I just
we're going to find out. All them people that cried, wanted him to get a job. So we'll see what he's made of.
Yeah, he's going to have to show something this year because, and that, as our producer points out, that insane Deshaun Foster.
Oh my God, that was bad. It was almost like it was a skit, like an SNL skit. Yeah, bad.
Did this guy take an edible before he came out here? Like, what is he like? He seems like he was spaced out in the zone. So, yeah, that isn't really reassuring if you're for a Bruin fan, but I don't know. I think, and as you talked about the fade on the market, the week 1 game versus Hawaii is another one where they have been faded significantly in terms of that game moving to under a touchdown, under 13, mostly painted 13, touch 12.5 some spots. So
I think I'll give you some. I think it comes down again.
I think so.
Just being honest. Somebody that's watching right now. I'm just telling you, sometimes market timing, I think you could have gotten a better number. You fired a little too early.
I agree.
I'm not against it. I do think it's getting to the point where the market's getting too cute. This is in the weeds, but we saw the market, specifically week 1, get too cute with Stanford at Hawaii last year, Washington State at Colorado State.
Yeah, that was the one
so this kind of reminds me of that. So I was hoping the market would really bottom out on this game where I could fire some UCLA, but I'm kind of in between now. I do like my Hawaii, like 18.5, but we'll see. And if you were following the show, I think we're talking about this when it was still 17, right?
Yeah. It was still a good 3-4 points above where it is now.
One more positive about UCLA. I snuck onto the field a couple weeks ago. Love the Rose Bowl.
Rose Bowl, baby.
Beats the Rose Bowl, baby. And the surrounding community around it.
Yeah.
Love it. Beautiful. If you're a college football fan and you don't need all the bells and whistles, you just want to look up at the mountains and look at the scenery and soak in the history and the sun, nothing better than the Rose Bowl, baby. A team that's never been in the Rose Bowl, as far as, obviously it didn't win a Big Ten championship, is Nebraska. That's the next team. Lots of, unlike UCLA and Maryland, this is lots of expected of Nebraska this year. This is one where the market likes Nebraska. Particularly they like that early schedule where they're probably going to be favored in their first 7 games of the season. Lots of returning experience, 16 returning starters for them. I like what they have up front on the defensive line. I think they're improved at wide receiver, I think, but nobody really wows me as far as, wow, that's a skill position guy you can really count on. They love Raiola. He looked good in the spring, but now you're asking a team that's had 7 straight losing seasons. Your win total's at 7.5. You're going 8-4 with a true freshman quarterback. I have my doubts. I want to hear what you think, but I'm on under 7.5.
Yeah, and you know what? Raiola not only, I know, one of their highest recruits they've gotten in a long, long time, but he was a guy, I think 4 different high schools throughout his tenure in high school. He played
not just his tenure, it was like in a 24-month period, 4 schools.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I agree with you. Relying on him to carry an offense, which has been pretty miserable for years. Even going back to, the magician Scott Frost era there, like they just were never really able to get it going. And that's not really Matt Rule. I think the defense can be good to very good this year. A lot returning, a lot more experience. I don't know, to get to 8 wins. I just think you have to kind of be a high. Now, again, you don't have Michigan, you don't have Penn State, but
no Oregon.
No Oregon.
Still at Ohio State, at USC.
I was gonna say, they got 3 really
can't
tough
beat Iowa
road games. Yeah, so. I agree. It's light early, but man, I can't.
I'll own it. It's even money. It's what +1. It's even money. I'll own it. Under 7.5 for me.
Only way I could go as well.
Yeah, so best bet under 7.5. I have bet a very similar number. Not one of my favorite bets for those watching, but it is a bet that I made and I haven't played back because I still, that is giving Matt Rule a lot of credit. And it's not like I don't like this year's team. I upgraded him a touchdown over last year. To ask them to win every single coin flip game when they have proven to be the worst team in the history of college football their last 5 years. I know people are regression because they're 8-30 in their last 38 games decided by 1 score. Regression. I've been waiting on it for 5 years. It hasn't happened. So it's going to have to happen this year for them to beat us on this win total. That week 2 game against Colorado. And you want to talk about NBC's licking their chops for TV ratings on that one.
That's on both sides, what I'd call a must, like both.
Oh my God.
Need that game. Bad.
And obviously listeners from last year, I just got reminded of this freaking game right before we started recording this. Of course, we had Nebraska in that game last year against Colorado. Well, Jeff Sims is not the quarterback anymore. So thank God. So yeah, we lost that one. It's unbelievable. Washington next up. The Huskies, obviously off a national championship game appearance that they came up short, to say the least, against Michigan there. But where they really come up short here is returning production or lack thereof. How about a big fat 0 returning starters on offense for the Huskies? New coach Jed Fish, who you and I both like, underrated as far as I'm concerned. Now they got some pieces, at quarterback, getting Will Rogers. That's a guy that's got a lot of starts under his belt in college football in the SEC. You're not going to replace Michael Penix, but that's a pretty good option. At running back, I thought they did a good job getting the Arizona kid to come over Coleman, so I don't think that's a significant downgrade from what Washington had at running back last year. Wide receiver is a massive downgrade when you lose 3 NFL draft picks, although that Boston kid's pretty good. Where they really are short, and it showed up in the spring game to me, man, O-line, D-line, and going to a more physical conference, they are decimated there, and I'm worried how they're going to hold up or won't hold up this year. So it's another team where we've seen a lot of movement on the under, went from 7.5 down to 6.5. And right now, if push came to shove, I'd probably lean under 6.5.
Yeah, as you said, I don't think, even though the defense brings some back, it wasn't a great defensive unit. So I'm not particularly bullish on the defense, and the O-line, I just think is a massive, massive concern for Will Rogers, who's not a guy who's going to run around. I think we'll see what Jed Fish does. And this is kind of, if you're bullish on Washington, it's kind of an in Jed we trust type of thing. He's a guy who, very similar to Kalen DeBoer, good offense everywhere he goes. He never really short on having, an offensive scheme that I believe in him getting the best out of his personnel on offense. But this, to me, is going to have to be almost like a Mike Leach type of Will Rogers, offense where they just get the ball out, like boom, 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 boom. They're throwing short passes. They're doing all that, like classic spread type stuff. And I don't know about, in the Big Ten, that type of travel up in Washington, I don't love that idea of, so again, I agree with you. I agree with the market there move. But I mean, they've got
the start of the schedule is pretty easy though.
Yeah, I was going to say they can, those first 5 weeks, they've got some definitely, I mean, you could come out of that 4-1 pretty reasonably.
Or 5-0. So,
yeah. So, yeah, I don't, again, I didn't do
I'm not running the bet under 6.5.
Yeah, for sure. So to me, yeah, it's kind of probably a pass on a team that we'll see what Jed can do once he gets some more players in.
Anxious to see, say they are 4-1, 5-0, then they get that big home game against Michigan. That'll be a big barometer game for them. Anxious to see how the market prices that one, because at that point Washington wouldn't have played anybody. Michigan had already played Texas and USC, so that's a game I'm kind of focused on, and maybe once we get there we can find some value on your Wolverines, is what I'm saying. Iowa's next. Boy, I got a feeling we're going to be involved on this team. The market loves Iowa, and what they love is the schedule that they see. You can see Iowa probably being favored in 11 of their 12 games, with the exception being at Ohio State. They see one of the best defenses in the country. They see, the returning production. People are going to love that they have 16 returning starters overall. I mean, I don't know if a returning starter on offense is a good thing for Iowa, considering how freaking bad they were offensively last year. They're in the top 10 in a lot of returning production rankings. I mean, just because they're a short favorite against Iowa State, Minnesota, Washington, Michigan State, Wisconsin, UCLA, Maryland, Nebraska, just because they're 3, 4, 5 point favorite in those games doesn't automatically mean that those are all wins, especially when you're coming off a season where somehow, some way, you had one of the worst offenses, not only in the country last year, but in the last 15 years of college football, there's only been 8 worst offenses. And those 8 worst offenses averaged win total for the season, what those teams won, a game and a half. Iowa won 10. You could be a much better team this year and not even come close to the win total. And that's where I think you and I agree on this year's team.
Yeah, this is probably as diametrically opposed a position as we've had to a market number and a market in since we started doing the show. I know I used to have a friend of the show, Bud Elliott, gave out them to make the Big Ten championship game. The win total, 8.5 sitting there, even though it's heavily juiced under, but there's some other 8.5s out there with last year. I don't believe in it. I'll tell you that. I don't believe in their quarterback room, especially. I don't believe in the new offensive coordinator hire. I don't believe the offense style is going to drastically change. I don't think their offensive line's very good. Lost their best lineman off last year's team. They tried to bring in, that Alabama transfer, Caden Stockton, to left tackle. He goes back to Bama. I don't see it. I just don't see the offense being dramatically improved. And I could see the defense taking, a small to medium-sized step back, even though they're bringing some back. Some of the best players off last year's defense were gone. And just, you know what? They were running a heater last year, baby. They're at the blackjack table. They're hitting blackjack. You know what? At some point, as you said, I think the water finds it level. And we're not talking about the late score game with Nebraska streak or anything. We're talking about this team being a historically bad offense that won 10 games when the bell curve here is you should have been at the complete opposite end and won 4. So, yeah, I'm out on Iowa. Needless to say, I'm under on the win total.
8.5 wins. Heavy juice, but that's one I'm not afraid of. I don't see 9.
No. I tell you, listen.
I think you're probably closer to 6-6 than 9-3.
I agree. And you know what? I think if you bet that 8.5, I think by middle of October, I think this team's 3-3. And you're already to the window there. I'll say it like that because I think that they're not going to beat Ohio State, and I think some of those other early games are very losable. I think at Minnesota's losable. I think Iowa State.
Iowa State against them.
Yeah, I think Iowa State's losable, and I think Washington could come in and give them trouble, and even so to me, under. At any number.
At any number. 8.5s are becoming more and more widely available. Shop around for the best price, but we'll go ahead and market the FanDuel price here, minus 188. It's heavy juice, but again, I can't get them anywhere. I just put in perspective. I bet under 8, thinking that was going to be the best number I was going to see was under 8. So I can't believe all this love for this team. Speaking of love, normally this type of year, you hear all these glowing practice reports all across the country. This did not get that at Iowa.
No.
In fact, just the opposite. The scrimmage. I have not read a worse practice report as far as any position group, the offense or defense in the entire country this fall camp than what Iowa did on offense last week's scrimmage. Horrific. Even had the stats. What was McNamara? 8 out of 24.
Yeah, 8 out of 24. A pick, a sack, a try to fumble. And as you said, usually the reporters on those you lean a little bit to the Kool-Aid, right? It's when you hear something really bad, that's the type of nugget that me and you are like, whoa, like that. Usually the guys who cover the team have to be a little bit more, X looked great, or they're making the guy look great. Both quarterbacks were like, oh my God. So I don't think, again, McNamara was a okay game manager at Michigan 2 knee injuries ago with significantly worse talent at Iowa. So yeah, as you said, I don't think we could be much stronger than what we just said here. We're both anti-Hawkeye.
2 other quick notes, and we'll move on. Cooper DeJean was maybe their best offensive player, getting him stuff as far as special teams, and considering also special teams, maybe their best player on their entire team and best guy for their offense was the punter, Taylor, the last couple of years, giving them short fields, pinning the opponents down inside the 10-yard line. Defense forces a 3-and-out. Iowa's still putrid, even though their average starting position is among the best in college football. It's just they don't have those 2 guys. And a lot of 17-14 wins can turn to 17-14 losses, just like that. And the margin of error for a team like this is so small, and I don't see it. So there we go, under 8.5 wins for Iowa. Wisconsin's next. Second-year coach Luke Fickell kind of underwhelmed a little bit. Obviously, there's still question marks about his offensive philosophy and whether or not it can work. Tyler Van Dyke, as we're recording this, has just been officially named the starting quarterback, the Miami transfer. Not wild about it. We'll see. I think this year's team is better than last year's team. I think they'll be a little bit healthier on the offensive line. Need to stay a little bit healthier at running back. Schedule's not very forgiving, considering Alabama week 3, then you're at USC. Penn State's on the schedule. Oregon's on the schedule. I lean over 6.5, but again, I don't see 8-4. It would have to be 7-5. I think is what they'll go. This is a team I don't think can run much better than that.
Yeah, I mean, it was ugly last year. The Longo offense, the transition from the man ball to the we're going to spread and throw it around didn't go well. Didn't go well at all. They still, were able to rely on their defense. I'll be honest. I'm not a Fickle guy. I know what he did at Cincinnati.
Oh, wow.
People rave about him. I'm not a bit, I don't think he's bringing, Wisconsin back to the promised land. And Wisconsin, for all those years, being able to, beat up on the Big Ten West there, that's all gone. I don't love, what? I thought they had a system that worked well for the region and the talent that they had, and going away from it, I think you're going to regret it, because I don't see a lot of improvement here. I don't love the guys they have in terms of just, all over the offense. And I know, listen, depending on what you think of Van Dyke on there, should he be better than last year's, quarterbacks? Yes, but I'm not super bullish on them. Again, not bullish on the Longo, not bullish on where the program's headed, not bullish on the overall roster. The defense, again, was solid. I think you'd be solid again. I'm not a buyer, though, on Wisconsin, I will say. The number, though, isn't where I'd be looking, 6.5. I can see why some people might be buying the over if you're buying in it. It's not. I would need a 7 or a 7.5 if I wanted to go under on this team.
In the weeds, and I don't want to sound, me, I'm not a Notre Dame homer, but I follow it. And a lot of the guys, and hear me out as far as the connection here, a lot of the guys that were responsible on the field and off the field for the Cincinnati job, and obviously, and you can't argue with the success Fickell had at Cincinnati, A lot of those guys are not with Fickell anymore. They're on Notre Dame staff. You have a bunch of the assistant coaches for the Cincinnati teams, recruiting coordinators and whatnot. So I just find it interesting that they all chose, not that Marcus Freeman's proven anything yet, but given the choice, I know Notre Dame's a little bit better program than Wisconsin, but I just can't believe everybody that's been given a choice between let's work with Fickell or work with Marcus Freeman, they've all chosen Freeman. So yeah, I'm a little pessimistic on whether Fickell can get this turned around, especially this is another team, a program, Big Ten West. Yeah, they'll be all right. Now it's no longer the Big Ten West. Now it's just the two best teams in the Big Ten, and I don't think they're getting to that mix anymore. So really, this edition really hurt the Wisconsin, the Iowas, and Nebraskas of the world.
Yep.
Next up is one of those newbies, USC, who, again, I think there's question marks on how they're going to handle the new conference as far as from a physicality, especially when you got a coach that's not known for his physicality. This is a team, though, I think maybe is a little bit under the radar because obviously the guy like Caleb Williams. I just go back to, I thought by far their best performance last year was without Caleb Williams. That was the bowl game. I don't know if there was a little bit of locker room issues or what, but they looked pretty good without him, at least first test in the bowl game. We'll find out right away against LSU right here in Vegas. I love the defensive hires, not just Lynn on the SDC, but brought in basically an all-star defensive coaching staff that has to be a significant upgrade over what they've had the last couple of years. Going to have to be. I worry about when you also LSU, Notre Dame non-conference, you're playing Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, a lot of physical teams. Their weakness would be up front, O-line, D-line. I don't know if they have the competitive depth yet to hold up. So I kind of understand why the win total is 7.5. I can tell you this, USC fans, when they started 11-1 under Riley, weren't thinking by year 3 they'd have a win total of 7.5.
Yeah, I will say I'm probably more bullish on this team, definitely than the market is. But
all right,
I think this offense can be back to. It's just like Lincoln Riley didn't forget how to coach offense. So to me, I think a lot of the problems are on the defensive side of the ball, which I'm not going to say they're going to totally shirt up in 1 year, but they actually hired a real DC, some defensive staff I like. They had been spending money to accumulate some defensive talents, which didn't really translate into better defenses. But I think those players are there and can be kind of an instant upgrade in terms of defense. And I know people. He was very polarizing, but Caleb Williams, I know he tried to do so much of his own thing last year that I think you saw in the bowl game that if you just run the Lincoln Riley offense, you run the plays, you deliver the ball like you should on time, like Miller Watts has the capability to do, it can be a very good offense. And they got a lot of guys, Zach Branch and the like, that can take advantage of that. So if I'm going to be a pessimist, you got LSU at Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn State, Notre Dame, at UCLA, at
a lot of physical teams.
You didn't get a very nice introduction into the Big Ten in terms of the way it's set up. So
I have the second toughest schedule in the country behind only Florida.
I'd lean over, but
lean over. Where's that, Zach? Could you please bring that up? Where's that 7.5? You going best bet over?
Man, no. 8 is tough. I feel like they get to, I would say, feel confident they get to, if you're giving me like a flat 7, I'm like, okay, let's see if they can get to 8. I'm borderline. I do like them. I will say I'm in on them week 1 though versus LSU.
There you go. Best bet that one.
Yeah. I know it flickered to 7 during the summer. I don't think it gets back there, but I like it at 6 or better.
6.5. There you go. Mark that one down, Zach. 6.5. USC. Trojans, fight on. I'll be rooting. Honestly, I'll be rooting for USC in that game. I hope Brian Kelly loses. That might be there to root that one on. There you go. That is the legend himself, Joey Knish, producer Zach Phillips. I'm merely Brad Powers. Normally, you'd say, hey, we talked 14 teams. We're done with the conference. We still got 4 freaking teams left here, starting with the defending national champs, the Michigan Wolverines. I don't even know why I need to cue this one up. In fact, I'm just going to go to you, Knish. Give me the breakdown on your Wolverines, what they got.
Yeah, this is one of those. If I know Jim Harbaugh and what he did and taking this program to heights that we hadn't seen in many a year. We'll get all credit due. They have, and listen, I know some of the defensive staff left, but they bring in Wink Martindale as DC. I think the defense still has the opportunity to be the best in the country. That's the type of talent it has, and I think returning, maybe not the type of depth it had last year, but we're talking 2 first-round defensive tackles, a first-round cornerback, and some guys, Jay Sean Barnum transferred from Maryland, who everybody's talking up. I think the defense can be elite. The big question mark is, what are we getting on offense? And I know, I've been dreading this moment because I know my guy Jackie. If you're a Summer Hit the Books listener, you know I'm a Jackie Tuttle truther.
Is he gonna play?
Word on the streets in the hard streets of Ann Arbor is that unfortunately my guy Jackie isn't 100%, and it's going to be our man Orgy leading him out there.
Oof.
Week 1 versus Fresno. Depending on whose camp the camp reports you're going to believe, I don't know. He's a guy I got to see it to believe it, because when I've seen him on the field, I've seen a great athlete that I don't want throwing the ball 20 times a game. We'll see if he's matured and can take that next step. So if there's question marks with Michigan, it's definitely going to be at the quarterback position.
You think wide receiver too? Offensive line takes a step back, in my opinion.
I don't
like the coaching staff, honestly. I'm just being honest. I think Martindale's seen his better days. Who would you rather have? They've had 3 guys from the pros. The last 3, obviously Minter. Who is the guy that started?
McDonald.
Yeah.
They're both. I mean, yes.
Well,
Like
who would you rather have? I think it's a significant downgrade. I don't see it, buddy, and I'm just not being an ass towards you. I got to tell you, one of my favorite bets I made all off season, and I got 300 plus, is against you under 9.5 wins.
I mean, listen, I agree. They do play that. I think the role that I'm going to love Michigan in most this year is
significant underdog role.
Is that short dog that Texas game?
All right.
Listen, that Texas game, I love them as a home dog in that game at a field goal or higher. Love. So that I like. But again, as you said, they got to play Oregon. They got to play Ohio State. They got to play Texas. They don't. I mean, they're going to have to, really have it together for a lot of the year. And as you said, if the quarterback position doesn't come through, then you could be looking at in 7-8 win type of year. But I think I'm that much. I think the defense can be that good where if you kind of run back the offensive playbook, physical offensive type of season this year. We'll see. Did I jump the gun a little bit on the 9.5? Yes, maybe a little post-national title afterglow there. But
I'd rather be in your position. Give me the title, and then look like a fool for the next 5 years. Give me my title.
Just as a fan, when you win one of these and you're not Alabama, I don't. If we go 8-4 this year, I don't give a damn. Hey, I'll go watch some YouTube of last year's season.
I think. You'd be, if you went 3-9 and one of those wins was against the Buckeyes, so you'd still be like, life is good. I got question marks. With that being said, all jokes aside, I do think provided they don't have the depth as last year's defense, but if they stay healthy, I do think it's a top 5 defense in the country. Speaking of defense, transition here, a little professional broadcasting. Penn State has had a good defense, but specifically last year, one of the top 3 defenses in the country. Manny Diaz is gone as defensive coordinator. A couple others are studs on the defense side of the ball, but I got to give James Franklin credit. We like both hires that he made at coordinator. Kotelnicki on offense, Tom Allen on defense. There's some bits and pieces to work with here. I still got some concerns on the quarterback. I just have not seen him throw the football down the field. Really, forget consistently. He didn't even try last year. We'll see if Kotelnicki can, scheme some stuff up for that offense. Sophomore slump for their 2 running backs last year. Hopefully they bounce back to where they were as freshmen. Look, James Franklin. The jury's. I won't say the jury's out, but the book is there. He beats the teams he should. He has not been able to beat Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan's not on the schedule this year, but Ohio State still is, and they're at USC. But I really right now looking at it, I only have an underdog in one game at home against the Buckeyes. So I think it's a 10-win team. I think they can go to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, this, as you said, like, this is a talented team, and I think it really depends most of we both. It has not been in Franklin's tenure. He is a coach that has to have coordinate. He's not a schematic coach, so he's a rah guy. He's a recruiter guy. He's a culture guy. He's not a guy who can fix the problems on offense or defense when they occur mid-game or during the week. So he went out and he hired two guys who we really like. And I think they're both upgrades over guys they've had, not just last year, but in kind of the recent past of Penn State. I think they are the best coordinators Penn State's had in a number of years on both sides of the ball. So if you believe that, and as you said, with a schedule that sets up where, to me, that if I'm paying James Franklin this kind of money and I'm spending this kind of money in the program and I'm getting Ohio, it's like,
got that Ohio State game. He needs to win one of them, man.
They got to win that game. I totally agree. Like that, the whole like show. If I'm paying this guy this kind of money, he goes out and wants raises every year, trying to ready to show himself to other jobs. I just spent money on these coordinators. I got this type of roster coming back. They need to win that Ohio State game, even if you could, maybe a dropping at USC or something. But that to me is I don't know if I call it a must-win game, but for the Franklin era. Like this whole like we're the third, fourth best team is that's got to be over. Like to me, they got to have that game at home at Penn State.
They're an underdog in that game, but you know what? I agree with you. I haven't talked about this publicly. That's a bet that I made. There's those memes out there for I don't know if you saw the shooting in the Olympics, like the people that have all the glasses and then the guy just sits up there with a gun. Sometimes, they're like, hey, the guy with just a gun, that's the feel betters. And then the person, I got my, my system and my analog and all this stuff. That's the one with all the glasses and all that. The Ohio State Penn State game, that was just a feel. It wasn't like a big, I got a big,
I was going to tell Steve Bill, pull it up.
I saw anything over 3. I like Penn State.
I'm in cheap 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. You can shop. You might find something a little bit better than that, but again, FanDuel's got 3.5. It's cheap. I think here's what I'm getting at. I think Penn State might win that game this year.
And you know what? I agree. Even if I don't see, like, to me, that's a game. That's going to be a game. Like, I don't think, you're like, to me, I love getting over 3 there. Because if they lose it, to me, that's a close game. Like, that's a all-in type of Penn State game for this guy. And you get the whiteout, going to be probably a night game or something there. Like, going to be a wild environment. So, yeah, I agree. That's a nice feel game.
Yeah, and if you look at, since they haven't beaten the Buckeyes since 2016, but they've had 3 times where they've had the Buckeyes, they've led by double digits. Mm-hmm. They've just blown these games. So that's a field game where I think I would not be stunned if Penn State just won that game. So I bet in the game of the year markets, I bet Penn State. And if you're out there and shop around, anything over 3 is good there. Next up, 2 more teams left. A newbie, Oregon, the Ducks, loaded. Recruiting classes have been back to back to back. Really good in the Pac-12. In fact, if you've stacked them against the Big Ten this year, right up there with Ohio State. Transfer portal and the Nike money backing has done them wonders, including at quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. They bring in Dante Moore's insurance policy as a backup. I think the jury's a little bit still out on Dan Lanning as a head coach as far as managing games when it's close. Got outworked against Kalen DeBoer in those 3 matchups, was the favorite in all 3 games and went 0-3 straight up. So I think there's a little bit of, needs some questions that need to be answered there, but they got wide receivers. They're solid at running back. I don't know if they're elite at O-line, D-line, but they got enough guys where this team, there's a reason why I ran to the window and laid -200 for this team to make the playoff. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. I think you could make the argument that, player to player, that this is, outside of Georgia. You could even, maybe you stack them up to Georgia. Like this is, I think I could even make the argument if you give me Dylan Gabriel over and Will Howard head to head, that it might be a little better. Just, they're starting 22 than Ohio State. This is a team that is stacked. But as you said, last year, They were a team that I think was better than Washington player to player, lost and continually got outcoached and lost that game. So yeah, and with the money this program throws around, this is kind of one that it's tough to call the first year a Big Ten, make or break type of thing, but they've got a national championship type of roster, and boy, that game, and they get Ohio State at Autzen that early.
I think they can win that game. It's just if then they have to beat Ohio State twice in the same season, that'd be very tough.
But if you win, like they have that game in the chamber, they're probably going to the Big Ten title. So yeah,
and even beside that game, we're at Michigan, but they're favored there, and I know you probably like Michigan plus the points, but I like Oregon to win that game. There's just not a lot of. Those are the only two games where I have them lined as a single digit in the single digits. They're a significant favorite in every other game on the schedule.
Yep, and just a team that I really like the upgrade, and it seems like Dylan Gabriel just fits it. I was not Bo Nix in the big time in the big games just wasn't a guy who I loved having as your to me. Dylan Gabriel I think is. I'm not going to call him a massive upgrade, but I like him having behind center a lot better than last year with Nick. So yeah, I think this Oregon team is no.
Have you bet the win total? I think it'd be a disaster if they went 10-2. It hasn't moved; it's flat.
So you think a disaster at 10-2?
Yeah, that means they'd lose to Ohio State and Michigan. You got to win one of them, right?
Yeah,
I guess not.
I agree. I kind of agree. I don't know.
I would be like 10-2. Dan Lanning's, he doesn't have the chops yet.
Yeah, it is tough to see. It really does say they've got pretty much two losable games.
Zach, if you could, I know it's a different menu. Can you bring up the to make the playoff menu at FanDuel? I'm anxious to see that price now on Oregon. I'll put it in this perspective. Ohio State and Georgia were priced at minus 500 or greater to make the playoffs. And Oregon was sitting there earlier, and you see the prices there. I still think Oregon's offering some slight value there. That number, they are much closer to Ohio State and Georgia than that market's giving them credit for. Again, I just said I think 10-2 is a disaster. 10-2 might still get them in the playoff. All right. I'll own that one. You don't like laying 3-1, but we need wins, man. Minus 300. Let's go. And again, the insurance policy, not that I'm a big Dante Moore fan. If Gabriel gets banged up, I got a backup quarterback. I like the Novosad kid at quarterback. So how many teams have three functional quarterbacks?
Right.
I like the schedule. I'll just put it that way. So best bet for me, Oregon minus 300 to make the playoff. Let's talk the next one. I'm sure we'll have some thoughts on this program. The Ohio State Buckeyes, final team on our list here is previewing the Big Ten. Team that I have number 2 in my power rankings. Oregon would be 3. Obviously, Georgia 1. But the Buckeyes, a lot of talk this offseason. Obviously, a lot of money was spent. Player retention, a lot of guys on defense back. Everyone decided to come back. They go out and get Will Howard. We'll see how that works out. Looks like Will Howard is going to be the starter. I don't know if he starts the whole season. I'll put it that way. Chip Kelly's brought in as the offensive coordinator. As much pressure on a coach as any that I've seen probably in recent memory. Not as far, obviously you got your hot seat coaches each and every year, but I'm talking about a guy where it's getting close to national championship or bust. Certainly the Michigan game could be bust. He could be 11-0, lose to Michigan, and the fan base will want him gone to lose 4 straight. So a lot of pressure on Ryan Day. I don't know if he handles it that well. You saw the post game, the Notre Dame game. He seems like a guy that's wound pretty tight. I want to beat up an 86-year-old man. I don't know what that's all about, but you could just feel that there's some tension here. I love look outside of quarterback. I think I'm being nitpicky. I don't know if the offensive line is elite, but it's still good. Defensive line's really good. I know a lot of people are going to say it's great. I didn't see great in the second half against Michigan, Missouri, and Notre Dame. I saw 3 teams go up and down the field on them on that defense. So there's some questions there, but I'm again being nitpicky. They deservedly are the second best team in the country behind Georgia. They're going to be favored in every game, with the only exception being at Oregon. What's your take on these Buckeyes? I'm anxious to hear what you got.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I kind of, there's, as talented a team as you can have. It's just with that quarterback coach combo just doesn't have me running to the, and as you said, like maybe a little nitpick with the O-line. I think they'll be fine there. Every other position group, you've got 4 and 5 stars all over the place. You got returning talent. There just really isn't a way to play them in terms of the betting market that I'm super interested. I don't want to bet them at, the heavy juice to make the playoff or win the national title with Will Howard at quarterback or 150 for the conference. There's just not a lot there in terms of how I want to play this team that I think is really bettable for me. So again, I think they're very good. I don't really trust when I don't trust the quarterback. I mean, this is a guy who couldn't get over the hump with CJ Stroud, who you've seen in one NFL year. Looks like he's going to be, a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And now they've changed. That's the other thing. The stylistic, like when Ryan Day was first coming in, they were thrown all over the park, NFL receivers everywhere. They still have that type of receiving talent, but now it's like we're going to Chip Kelly and we're going to run up-tempo man ball. I don't love that. I didn't love it at UCLA when he was doing it at the end. I think just some of Chip Kelly, and we talked Wink Martindale, having maybe his best years are behind him. I think Chip Kelly's best years are behind him. So, again, very good. There's just not a way that I really want to back this team. With that said, I'm not fading them in any manner. Yeah. There's a couple of individual games. We've taken some spots that the Penn State game we just talked about. The Michigan game, I've taken some, at a few numbers there that have been in Michigan. Yeah. So I almost like kind of that position if I'm going to play it against them in terms of just a select few games. I know some other people that I know have liked playing Oregon at home versus them. So yeah,
I played that.
Yeah, so I like that better than any of the the future market or any of that stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, individual games I talk about Penn State possibly beating them, Oregon, but I didn't run in the window bet under 10.5. I mean,
yeah,
no, I didn't, even though it's juice to the over. I understand that.
Yeah,
look, running back 1-2 punch is as good as I've seen. I mean, probably Reggie Bush, Lendale White type. Yeah. I mean, what they have at running back. I think their secondary's elite. It's just, you hear comments like, I know he's a former Ohio State coach, Urban Meyer, but he's like, this is the best roster in college football in recent memory. And that's what I'm grading it at. Is it the best roster in recent? Right. See that. Again, I don't even have number 1 this year. I have Georgia number 1. So that when people are getting on me that I'm being nitpicky, that's what I'm grading it against, because I know this. Buckeyes, if they don't win the national championship, I think there's be a large portion of the fan base that'll act like this season's a disappointment again. Even with a win over Michigan, if they went undefeated and lost the national championship game to like Georgia, there would be people disappointed. That's the expectations this year.
Yeah, no, as you said, I mean, you just can't, right? Literally cannot get higher than the bar that they've set this year with the money they've spent and the chirping from the media and stuff. And as you said, it's a coach that hasn't really come through under pressure in his tenure, and the pressure, it couldn't be any hotter. It could not be turned up any higher than what they have this year with the expectation where any loss is going to be unacceptable. Maybe. And
say they lose one of them games? What happens to this team? How tight are they wound? I have heard, again, this is in the weeds, being nitpicky, that Judkins wasn't a great teammate at Ole Miss last year. Is he not? If he's not getting his carries, I don't know. There's stuff there that I'm not like pounding my fist. This team's going to win the national championship this year, but it's still a great team from a great state. It's my home state. I'm wearing the Ohio State hat, so I do think the Buckeyes winning are good. It's good for college football, just like Michigan winning was good for college football. You got any closing thoughts? Honestly, look, you know me, I'm pretty self-deprecating. I thought this was our best show we did all offseason so far.
It's our country, man. It's our land, man. Big Ten, Big Ten. So I agree. This was good. I wish, we didn't give out. Did you play anything in terms of conference futures for this conference?
I did. It's terrible though. I mean, Ohio State plus 165 to win it. I think I played a little bit of Oregon to win the Big Ten at like right around that price at plus 220. I think plus 220 is still playable. In fact, I got to look what I played. In fact, I might have played a worse price than that. I'm a little kudos to FanDuel for putting that up. I never know when to attack markets now because it's just plus 220 is exactly what I bet. So let's go with that. Are you happy with that? Plus 220?
Yeah, no, I like that. Because I agree. I played a little Penn State at a number that was higher though, so I don't.
Yeah, I did too. Those are the three that I played. Did you play any Michigan?
Not yet. I will tell you though. That's one of those. If they lose the Texas game, then maybe I'll jump in then. So I think at some point, if you get a loss on the schedule, Michigan's one that I'd be looking to play after a loss.
What if they beat? Well, I don't understand the thought process. What if they beat Texas? What's that have to do with? I would rather play them after they beat Texas to win the Big Ten. Yeah, if they can beat Texas, they can win this conference.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, I just the fact that they've got that. I just don't know if the schedule lines up right because I think that Ohio State game. I'd rather just play them in that game, either money line or straight that, than have to play that game and then the Big Ten championship the week after. So
you like them plus the points there. If you want to bring that up, Zach.
I think it's 9.5 FanDuel.
You want to give that one out if it's more than 10? You liked it. You're 7.5. Give me Michigan. Hey, buddy, you're gonna get double digits.
I got some 11. So I got a few prices on this game. But I do. I mean, at double digits, is there some risk there if Michigan offense falls off a cliff? Sure, but to me,
Well, the Buckeyes, I'll say this on your behalf on that game. If they're going to decide to play this different type of style of offense where they're not throwing it all over, that plays into your hands as far as taking the double digits. If you're going to go old school Woody Bowe type of game there. If Michigan's getting 10.5 or more in that game of the year line, 9.5. You must have hit that before I've seen. You must have been hitting that.
We're recording. I got to fill myself up.
Okay, you hitting the kiosk on that one. Thank you, Zach, for pulling that up. And I'm going to be Zach. If you want to recap our bets from the show real quick. I know I'm putting a lot on you, bud. That is Zach Phillips, the star of the show, folks.
So here's what we got coming into today. We had one Big Ten bet. That was Michigan State under 5.5 wins minus 150. That one you guys talked about already. And then we added Illinois under 5.5 minus 128. Nebraska under 7.5 plus 100 even money there. We have Iowa under 8.5 minus 188. We added Oregon to make the college football playoff minus 300, and Oregon Big Ten outright winner plus 220. So, by the way, minus 300, that is the largest number we've ever laid here in the history of Hit the Books.
Oh, baby.
Yeah. Ooh, the pressure's on me there. And did you mention it? Penn State plus 3.5 against Ohio State.
So as well, the weekly bets that you guys are bringing up, we added the Penn State plus 3.5. We also threw in USC plus 6.5. That was another one that was added in there from Knish.
Boom. That was a loaded show. Again, I think our best show of the whole offseason. Closing thoughts, I'll leave to the man.
Yeah, hey baby, we're getting close. I can taste it, and you can tell. Hit the Books is getting in mid-season form already, baby. So one more conference preview to go, and then we got the live shows coming back. Thank you to our friends at FanDuel, baby, and excited to get the college football season started.
That is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joey Knish. For Zach Phillips, I'm merely Brad Powers. You just watched Hit the Books, part of the Hammer Betting Network, sponsored by FanDuel.